Welcome, everybody, to Casting for Two, the podcast with your host, Chris. I am that guy. I am back. I didn't go anywhere. Last week, I did something cool with the intro because this show now has a partnership with Secret Stage Productions. And one thing I wanted to do was bring... I've wanted to work with Zach and the rest of the crew at Secret Stage for a while now, and I thought it'd be great to come up with a new podcast exclusively for the Secret Stage production banner. So that is what I did. It's called Sunday Brunch, and it's hosted by Megan Johnson of Tipsy Writer and myself, and every week we share a meal together and talk about what's going on with us and the world. So if you want to hear me, if you've ever wanted to know how the sound I make when I eat, this is your shot. And that's every Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern on Secret Stage Productions. And of course, you can always find it on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, and YouTube. I'm very excited about the show, and go check it out, please. And thank you. But I need to get into my guest for this week. For today, the guest is the band Occurrence. And I talked to Ken Urban, who is in the band. He made the band. He founded the band. And I had such a great time chatting with him. He's a wonderful gentleman, and the new album, The Past Will Last Forever, is out right now. And I think you should go get it because it's unlike anything I've ever heard, and it's very unique, and it has a lot of heart. So when you're done listening to this, go pick up the album. But first, let's cue the music. So Chris, please and thank you. Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. And yourself, Ken?
I'm doing pretty well. My Wi-Fi, I'm in rural Virginia at a residency, so my Wi-Fi might be a little weird, so let me know if I cut out or anything.
Okay, no problem, no problem. See, I live in a suburb of San Antonio, so my Wi-Fi is very wonky as well.
Yeah, it's working well so far today, so let's hope it stays.
Right. It works when it wants to, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or when you don't need it.
Exactly. It's because my internet gets super slow, usually in the morning times before 11, from maybe, I want to say 7 to 11.
I haven't been tracking it, but that makes sense, right? Right. Everybody's using the internet in the morning when they wake up.
Exactly. And then it gets, and then after that, it's fine until 4 o'clock hits, until maybe around 9 or 10 at night. That's when it gets bad.
Well, good. We're in that sweet spot then before it gets bad again.
Exactly. Yeah, no, we're fine. Weird, whenever I do interviews during that time period, it's always funny because I always, am praying something doesn't happen, the audio, my internet just doesn't go down. But it'll either do it before or after I have to talk to somebody.
Good. Knock on wood.
Exactly. But how's your day going?
Good. I've been doing this residency for about over 3 weeks now, so I'm wrapping up. I'm looking forward to getting back home.
There you go.
It's good. It's nice to have time to work, but it's also I'm in the middle of nowhere without a car. I'm going a little stir crazy.
Gotcha. So, what have you embraced any of the culture, or it's just like, you know what, I'm here to work. That's what I'm gonna do.
I basically have just been working because I don't have a car and we're not really near the town. We're sort of out in the middle of the woods. I'm basically there's there's a room where I sleep in the main house, and then I have my studio, which is where I am now. And those are the two rooms that I've been in for the last like 3.5 weeks.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Intense.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. And so this is casting for two. If you don't know by now, where we can chat about anything you want. But what I like to find out first is when you found out you had a passion for music. When did that hit you?
God, I think I've always really been into music, and so I remember being a kid, and I hear stories from my parents about this, is that I was obsessed with my dad's record collection when I was a
Mm.
kid. But I would like drop the needle and of course scratch his records, including a lot of like first edition Beatles records,
Yeah.
which he was never very
Yeah.
happy with that I did. But I've always remember having like a record player and like a cassette deck, and I remember in like fourth grade asking for like a Yamaha synthesizer. So I always remember music being in our life. And my dad was a drummer. And so there
Mm.
was always like a drum kit in our basement growing up. And so I think I just always, yeah, I always just played music. I mean, I was forced to take piano lessons, which I didn't really enjoy because I think, at least back then, I don't know what it is like now, but back then when you took piano lessons, they were trying to like convince you to be a classical pianist, which I had no
Right.
interest in. So I quickly, once I figured out how to read music basically and, new scales, I was like, that's enough.
No, exactly. I remember when I was a kid, I had a couple of kid record players. Nothing
hmm Fisher
fancy.
Price.
Exact. I think mine had a rainbow right on the top of
Yeah,
it.
that sounds about right.
But I remember the needle was missing. So I was like, oh, well, I can just replace that. So I put a thumbtack in there thinking it'd
Oh,
be the same thing. Now, I didn't have my parents' records to mess up. I had my own, crappy storybook records. So it was okay. I just ruined those. But
yeah, that's
I,
good. Yeah, it's not good to ruin your dad's records. He really pisses him off.
yeah, no. Now, though, now that I'm older and so is my dad, I saw his record collection a couple years ago, and he has it in a box, and they've been in the heat, so some of them are all warped. So I gave him a stern lesson about keeping his records nice and neat.
Yeah, you can't. You have to keep your records. You treat them with care, or else they'll get fucked up pretty fast.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But I'm also envious of piano players because I've always wanted to play piano, at least learn how to do it. And I started out playing the tuba, and then and then as I got older, I started being in more percussion. I like the drums. I'm a drummer. Give me stick, I will hit something with it. But then I was able to, and I never got how people were able to play like the marimbas and the piano. To me, it just,
Oh.
yeah, at the time I was like, how does this translate? And of course, it's just a giant keyboard. So, and then once like I learned my scales, and I was like, oh, I can do that on piano now. And I still can't play, but I know my scales.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that like there's always an instrument that you don't play that you wish you did. Like I wish I played guitar and
Yeah.
I just can't. I just is not in my, so it's always been like piano and drums. It's like what I learned as a kid. And that's basically, I mean, now everything is, I program everything. And so I think that also plays the other part of my brain, which is always interested in like synthesizers and sounds that didn't sound like regular instruments. So.
I'd see. The only thing I too wish I played a little bit of guitar, but not really. I just want a solo, a guitar solo. That's it. And then I'm done. Like Esteban takes out his guitar and then just done. See you
Yeah.
later.
I mean, the problem with the guitar though is like there's so much baggage with playing the guitar. Like suddenly then you become like that dude with the acoustic guitar, like playing Kansas songs or some shit like that. And so I always really didn't like that. I always thought like keyboard players seemed much cooler, like Gary Newman, sort of like aloof and cold. I sort of like that.
Right, right. And see, I'm going back and watching some of the older Marx Brothers movies,
hmm
and they always have musical sequences. And Chico, the way he plays piano is just so fun. And I encourage anybody to go out there and YouTube it because
Yeah, I don't know.
he does crazy stuff on the piano. It's pretty basic, but he puts on a show when he does it. So you can go. I don't know when your Wi-Fi is good. You should YouTube it because it's great.
I will do that.
And yeah, guitar players back. Yeah, whatever. What was it that really made you embrace the synth and synthesizing everything? Or not
Well, I
everything,
think
but in general.
I guess the thing about it was that you could do lots of stuff that didn't sound like anything else, and it seemed like endlessly malleable. Like with a piano, it's like you can make a couple of different sounds, but nothing too memorable.
Hmm.
And the thing with a synthesizer, you then like really cheap old synthesizer with the right, time and technique, you can make it do something interesting. And I think I also like the idea that you can make it could sound really big. Like it could sound like it was lots of people making music rather than just one person with a
Hmm.
machine like that. And I guess there's always been like a techie part of my brain. And so like that always sort of appealed to me, the idea that you could spend time with something like that. Obviously, this is way before laptops and computers, but like just with like a crappy synthesizer, you could make it do something that it wasn't supposed to do, and then it sounded better.
And do you remember when you first, even found out the notion of a synthesizer?
Yeah, I don't know why. I think it was like in fourth grade. I like that was like what I wanted for Christmas.
Hmm.
Maybe because I had watched like a bunch of Duran Duran videos or something. I have no idea, but like there was like a really shitty music store in my hometown, and they had like one weird Yamaha synthesizer. I mean, it was like, not a huge one,
Hmm.
and my parents got it for me for my birthday, and so I was like in heaven. I thought that was really fun to just play with it, make
And
sounds. And then at that time, I was making music with a high school friend, and so that's just how it started.
gotcha. Did you? I mean, I'm assuming your dad, a drummer, making a lot of noise. Did they ever, at one point, tell you stop with the wham whams or anything like that while you were practicing?
I think luckily we were in the basement, so they
Nah.
couldn't hear us too much. But I do remember when I would play the drums, if I played them really loud, there were certainly rules about when I could and couldn't do that.
That's a thing that people who don't play drums won't understand. Like we will. There were certain times when we could play the drums. It couldn't be early in the morning,
Yeah.
couldn't be late at night, and and people or my buddy makes fun of me for this day, but my parents always told me never let anybody play your drums that don't know what they're doing. So no one plays my drums
Uh,
pretty much. And so, but
yeah, I'm sure my dad probably had that rule, but I ignored
nah.
it.
So, can you tell me a little bit about Occurrence, the band you're in now? How did you start up with that?
So I'm a playwright by day. That's
Hmm.
primarily what I do. And when I first started having productions of my plays, the theater companies couldn't often afford a sound designer, and sound was always really important to my plays. So I started learning some of like the basic like Pro Tools, basic like apps to make sound, to sort of make some sound to go along with these productions that I was having in New York. And from there, it sort of grew and became its own thing where I started just making lots and lots of short pieces that weren't necessarily for plays. And that's how the band kind of started. I didn't take it really seriously until like 2009. I was playing music in a different band with some old college friends when I was living in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And they were like, yeah, you should take this stuff seriously. It's interesting. You should keep working on it and see what you can do. And so from there, Occurrence became like a real thing. And the name is like one of those names where I just stuck with it because when I first started making these pieces, I couldn't afford to buy like the real program. So I download the demos, but
Mm.
like the demos, of course, come with all these stipulations so you can't save things. So I would just feed everything out into like a mini disc recorder from my computer, this sound. And so everything I made was a one-time occurrence because I couldn't save it and go back and work on it again. And it was one of those things where like, that's a terrible name, but I'll just, use it as a placeholder. But then it sort of stuck. And so I've been making music primarily on my own for the last couple of years. And then in 2014, I started writing this new record, and I really wanted to work with a female vocalist.
Hmm.
And so as luck would have it, my friend Kat, who I went to college with, but I hadn't seen or really spoken with since I graduated from college. She friended me on Facebook, and we sort of struck up a friendship again on Facebook. And I said, hey, I remember you used to sing all the time in college. You were in a lot of bands. You were really good. She still did music like after college. She played in a couple of bands, sang in a couple of bands. And I said, oh, would you be interested in maybe singing and working on some songs with me? And she was like, sure. So I sent her one song. It was just the music and the title of the song and like a brief description of what I was thinking about when I wrote the music.
Hmm.
And she came back with like these amazing lyrics and these great vocals. And I mixed it, a rough demo of the song, and sent it to her. And I was like, this is really good. We should keep doing this. And so lo and behold, over the course of the next couple of months, we had a record. And so I was like, oh, we're in a band. And so we made it official. And then that's sort of how it goes. So right now, the band is myself, Kat, who's our singer, and then we're joined by a couple of other vocalists. And then there's a graphic designer who's also part of the band who kind of like does all of our visuals, designs our records and digital releases and our, merchandise and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's exciting. So this new record comes out October 7th. So it's coming up.
Right on. And so when and the new record is called "The Past Will Last Forever."
Uh-huh.
How did you come up with that?
Titles are hard for records,
Yeah.
and when we were finished, like all the original, all the 10 songs that made into the record were kind of finished. They weren't mixed yet, but they were done. And I was just having a bitch of a time figuring out a title for it. And it was like, in all the folders on my computer, it was like LP5 because it was like the fifth record. And I was like, well, that's a terrible title for a record. And I think All Tech had already taken it. So I was like, I need to think of something else. And one thing that Kat and I realized that we never talked about when we were making the record, when we were writing the record, but that we were both going through divorces at the
Mm.
same time that it was happening. And so a lot of that spilled into the writing of the record, but we never really talked about it until it was finished. And then as luck would have it, I was listening to a bunch of mixes on my phone on the subway in New York. And in New York, we have these, I think it's called Poetry in Motion, where they have these poems that are like plastered inside the subway cars to like, distract you during your commute.
Oh,
And there's this
cool.
poem by Patrick Phillips called Heaven. And that's where I got the line, the past will last forever from. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense because Kat, someone from my past, a lot of the other people on the record were people we went to school with. My new boyfriend sings on the record. There's a lot of songs about our exes on the record. And so it seemed like an appropriate thing when I saw that poem, and the poem just really hit me. And luckily, I reached out to Patrick, and he lives in Brooklyn, and he said, sure, that we could print the poem. So when you download the record, there'll be a PDF booklet, and it will feature the poem.
Mm.
And it's also on the vinyl of the record, too. It is in the inside cover. It has the poem as well.
Okay, right on. And so, from that album, was there one particular song that was harder to figure out, whether it was lyrically or musically?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a long, I mean, I feel like when it comes out in October, we already like are in the middle of writing the next one. And it feels crazy because it was finished being mixed last December. So it feels like there's always that long lag time between finishing the project and the project coming out. But I think the way that I wrote the record was that I did a new demo every day for a month just to like try and make as much music as possible and see if it was something that was like worth kind of keep going at. And so I had 30 demos. So I think the hardest part was looking at those 30 demos and being like, what are like the 10, 12, 15 of this bunch that are worth kind of working on.
Hmm.
And once I started working with Kat, I realized that previous releases were mostly instrumental or vocals came from like sampled sources. Um, and so this one, I was like, well, this one is going to be a record that there's singers on every single song. It's going to be like that. And so that immediately makes things harder because when I was writing some of the music, I didn't necessarily think about it as having vocalists on it. Um, And then the big decision was that like I had mixed all the previous releases myself, but then like in August, I was like, I've been listening to these mixes for like 2 years now. It feels really, I feel really stuck. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
reading, I think it was Panda Bear from Animal Collectives are always saying that it's really helpful to have somebody else mix the record when you're working, especially when you do it mostly on your own. And so I reached out to a couple of folks, and I ended up working with this guy called Matt Boynton, Boynton, and he had mixed a couple of records that I really liked and worked out of his studio, which is now unfortunately closed in New York City. And so he mixed the record, and I was there in the studio with him, and it was great because a hearing it out of context and having somebody else's ears on it, especially with someone like Matt's skills, and also Matt comes from a much more like guitar record, like he mixes a lot of bands that are much more guitar based than we are, and so it was nice to have. I didn't want it to sound like it was a record that was made on my laptop in my home studio. I wanted it to have a kind of warmer, bigger sound. And
Yeah.
so that was like a big leap forward is when we started working with Matt.
All right, on. And so, right now is the time of the podcast where I like to let you uh, talk or pitch anything you want. But for the people at home, where can they follow you?
Well, like everyone, I guess we're on social media. So Occurrence, we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter account, so people can find us there. It's Occurrence Music for both Facebook and for Twitter. Our release it'll be out on Bandcamp digitally, and then it'll also be available on vinyl, which is pretty exciting. And the vinyl looks really beautiful. It's like a limited edition, and it's a nice piece of art. So that all comes out October 7th. So we're pretty excited. We're going to do like a record release show in New York. We don't really play live. We both have, I mean, Kat, my bandmate, lives in Kansas and
Mm.
I live in New York City. So there's
Yeah.
there's that. Plus I'm at a point in my life where I'm not really ready to get back in a van and tour. And plus the music is all so electronic based. I don't really know seeing me like stand behind a laptop, but we're God, I'm terrible at pitching. Sorry. So that's so they can find us on social media. They can buy the record. That's my pitch because
Right.
I think it's a pretty special piece of work, and it's been exciting playing it for people over the last couple of months and seeing how excited people have gotten. I think the thing I keep hearing from everybody is like, oh, this sounds so different. It's unusual, and yet it sounds uncanny, like a lot of music I love from the '90s. And so that's what we were going for. So that's cool.
There you go. Now I'm just gonna suggest something. You know, how much how we are talking to each other. You and Kate, your bandmate, Skype performances. Just put her on Skype, and there you
Yeah, we
go.
could do that. We also have this crazy idea where we're going to make a tour schedule
Uh-huh.
for non-existent places, like
Yeah.
just like, abandoned psychiatric hospitals and things like that, just to see if anyone came. But that's probably a stupid idea.
No, I like that. There's this thing that map makers do is that they would put fake towns in certain states so that they know if somebody just copied their work.
Oh, that's
So
very smart.
so there
Yeah.
you go.
So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have a fake tour in fake places in your mind.
There you go. And I can't wait to fake go.
Right.
I'll
Thanks.
be in the fake front doing the fake mosh pit.
Just as long as you real stream and real purchase the music, that would be
Oh yeah, of course.
helpful.
Oh yeah, real purchase. Yes.
I don't know. People purchase music anymore, illegally download it, whatever you want to do.
Hey, I still purchase my music. I would like to say for the record.
I do too, but I think we're probably in the minority. My
Yeah.
students look at me. I also teach part-time to make ends meet, and my students are all 18-year-old, 19-year-old. They're college students, and they all look at me like that's crazy. Like
Yeah.
buy music.
No. Yeah. And see, people also look at me weird because I prefer to watch TV, cable. I buy Blu-rays. I don't stream, and I'm the weirdo.
You are old-fashioned.
Yeah.
I will say, like, because cable TV, at least in New York City, is so expensive, and I'm never
Mm.
at home. I'm always traveling for work. I have broken down, and like most of my TV watching occurs on my laptop.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Terrible.
it's you got to do what you got to do.
It is what it is.
There you go. Well, Ken, I want you to have a great day and keep up the good music.
Oh, well, thanks very much, and thanks for taking time to talk to me.
Absolutely. And good luck with that Wi Fi.
Thanks. Take care.
All right. Bye bye.